Milk basis or fatty acid basis, when and why? So there are two ways that you can look at your PROFILab report. So we're just going to walk you through these examples here. So one of the first thing we do is looking at the components. So here we see that the butterfat of the producer was quite above average up till mid-March, where the butterfat dropped here. And at the same time, there's not much of a change in protein, and MUNs might have increased slightly. But then when we look a little more into detail and we look into the fatty acid profile, looking here in the milk basis, we see that what really might have caused this depression in butterfat mid-March seems to be the preformed fatty acid. So looking at this green line here, we see that the preform were pretty stable near the average, and that mid-March they started really to decrease even below the level of the mixed fatty acid. And if we look de novo and mixed, there seemed to be not much of a difference in these two curves, maybe a slight decrease at the level of the mixed fatty acid here. So now if we look at it on a fatty acid basis, well, what we can see is pretty much the same thing. We have a drop in the preformed fatty acid, so they dropped, but it looks like the de novo and the mixed curves have increased, which is not really the case when we look at it in a milk basis. So remember that when we add these three curves together, they will always come to 100%. So if one curve is going down, for sure the other curves have to compensate and add up to 100%. So looking at a fatty acid basis, we could have assumed that, the de novo have increased and think that, this is a good change that occurred in the barn. But really, when we look in the milk basis, it gives us a better understanding of the overall. So there seems to be no change in de novo, a slight change in mix, but really a drop in preformed fatty acid that can really explain here why we dropped the butterfat. So it just gives us a little more information and a few more solutions that we can evaluate for this farm. In this scenario here, so this is example B, let's start with the fatty acid basis profile. So when we look at it, we see that the three curves are pretty much near the average, with the de novo slightly below average and the preform a little above just at the end of March, but overall they're pretty stable curves, really near averages. So when we look at this, we can think that, everything's on average, so this herd might be on average as well. But when we look on a milk basis, it gives us a little more overall understanding of this farm, and we realize that really the three curves are below the average. So looking at this one here, we can estimate and assume that butterfat in milk might be lower the average, and this is what we see here. Again, this is a 4 kilo per hectoliter butterfat level, but we are way below the average here in Quebec. That's near 4.2. So you can use either basis depending on how comfortable you are. We prefer to use milk basis as it gives us a more overall understanding in the herd. It's grams per 100 grams of milk, so it just puts everything all together in the understanding. But the two bases are available, and you can go either way depending on how you're comfortable. Here is the correlation between the de novo and the mixed and butterfat based on the fatty acid units. So if we look in the milk basis and we look only at the Holstein herds, if we compare de novo plus mixed fatty acid per 100 grams of milk compared to butterfat, we see that there is a strong correlation between the two, a 60% correlation between the level of the de novo and mixed grams per 100 grams of milk compared to butterfat. If we look in a fatty acid basis, again looking at de novo plus mixed compared to butterfat, we see that the correlation is pretty flat, near zero. So this is why we really use milk basis, is the correlation is clearly stronger between de novo mix and butterfat, and this is the basis that we use in our analysis. So for us, this is the best choice to explain the impacts on butterfat.